My inheritance has cost me. The car and gadgets are nice. And I've almost gotten used to the smell in the cave. It's the criminals. Since my father died, they've focused their attention on me.
Hey man, somebody killed this lady.
And the people around me. My father's enemies have gotten more twisted with age, more violent and suicidal.
Crashing this plane with no survivors.
Because they know their inevitable end is near. They've seen Batman die. They've seen each other die.
I can't believe they killed him. Yeah, man, things are getting really bad out here.
The Riddler.
This puzzle is far more than any mere game.
Dr. Death.
You and I go way back, Batman.
Two-Face.
I still believe in Harvey Dent.
All gone. Like the life I hoped for beyond this mask. Everything I have, everything I am, is because of him. I'm the Batman's daughter. I am the Huntress. And tonight, I'm hunting the man who destroyed my life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of the Huntress Podcast. In this one, we're talking about Adventure Comics 463 with Helena Wayne. I'm Ashford. Along with me is Laurel. Hello, Laurel.
Hello, Ashford.
And we also have Diane. Hello, Diane.
Hello, Ashford.
Happy 2021 to everyone. We're on this side of it. Like I told Laurel and Diane, I'm practicing saying 2021. All right. I'm going to get a little lazy and just say 2021, but I'm trying to enunciate there. But like I mentioned before, we're talking about Adventure Comics number 463. You can kind of say like this is an anthology where when you get the book, it's packed with other stories in there, but we are specifically talking about the Night of the Soul Thief, correct?
Nice, correct.
Justice Society, yep.
Yeah, so now this one, can we say it has a cover? Does it have a proper cover, or does it just jump straight into?
It does have the proper Adventure Comics cover, so you've got Dr. Fate fighting some mysterious guy in purple there. You've got Power Girl fighting some demon-looking creatures. Same thing with Green Lantern and the Flash.
Another explosive 17-page epic, it says.
And then, I'm looking at, I guess it would be considered the first page, Justice Society, the Night of the Soul Thief, where they're all kind of action pose running towards the camera, if you will. What do you think about this first page, Diane?
Well, the first thing that I noticed is that Huntress and Robin don't have the masks on, and it's already cluing us in. Okay, so if they don't have the masks on, then I'm assuming the world knows who they are, and that's before I even read the text on the page. So that would be the first thing that I notice is Robin, Huntress, they're not wearing the mask, so why is that? And then everyone else is, except for, Flash, because he never wears one. But yeah, the first thing I kept noticing was they don't have masks on, so either the world knows their identities or something else is up.
Laura, what do you think about this first page if we were to say it would pass as a cover?
Yeah, I think the same thing. The masks it's just sort of shocking because it's just so odd. You're not used to it. Although I have to say the other thing is all these flapping capes. We've got lots of cape flappage going on. Everybody with a cape, they're all billowing out and flapping around. So it makes it feel dynamic. The way they're running towards the reader is really a nice setup. I think it's engaging. It's like, okay, here we go.
Oh, it's fun. Laurel and I were reading this on the DC Universe app, so it's in not quite monochromatic, but it's just in black and white. But it would be fun to see this in color. Now, we did get some feedback when we talked about Adventure Comics 462 on episode 42. This is by Tim Price. This was back on December 11th. It says, wow, that's a wild story. Overall, I thought it worked. Like you all, I do have questions and glad it looks like they'll get answered as the series continues. No worries. I can be patient. And I enjoyed your discussion about Batman gets killed by a nobody, a brand new character, rather than one of his villains. he put us in quotes there. One angle I see is Paul Levitz felt he had to use a villain powerful enough to take on the whole JSA, and Batman's villains, by and large, don't fit the bill. Also, he might not have wanted to sacrifice a classic JSA foe who normally would be powerful enough in the murder-suicide moment. Ultra Humanite, for example. So a brand new character avoids both of those problems. He's powerful enough to just because, and with a no pre-existing background, it's easy to make him the sacrificial goat for the story. Not saying it's a great decision, but not unreasonable either. Whew, that was way too long. Thanks, Hunt Trio. Catch you next time. I think that's what we were talking about too. Wait, Laurel, what do you think about that response?
Yeah, that sounds about right. When you have to have a character's death like this, it's going to be remembered. So I think, you've got to try to do it right, but not in such a way that it wrecks your continuity for, the characters that are going to go forward. So I think if they had taken out one of his villains and they had managed to kill themselves in the process, we all would have been like, oh, but, now Robin can't take on so-and-so or whatever, it would have been. And I also think it would have overshadowed what happened to Batman, because we would have that more equal footing, where this we're like, okay, this weird guy got killed, but oh my gosh, Batman's dead. So that's where I am on that one.
Diane?
Now, I think Tim raises a very good point there about, keeping, any of Batman's future villains usable as well as JSA villains usable, because once you have a villain kill an iconic character like Batman, either that character becomes unusable in a future story, or in the case of what actually transpired in that story, both the villain and hero die. You're not able to use that villain again in a future story. So in the case of the Joker, he does actually appear in a Helena Wayne Huntress story sometime in the future. So yeah, it's probably a good idea that they didn't use the Joker in this case, because if the villain was meant to die with the hero here, then the Joker would have been unusable in a future Helena Wayne story. So yeah, I do get Tim's point there about how you have to sorry, I do get Tim's point about how you need to keep characters usable, especially JSA characters and future Batman characters in the case of the Huntress, because she's got a solo series at this point in Wonder Woman. So yeah, it's actually a very good point. I agree with Tim there.
So this is the Adventure Comics 463 cover date May/June 1979. The on sale date was February 8th, 1979, according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics. It has a cover price of a whopping $1. Page count 64. Contains ownership statement true. Circulation 131185 for those keeping track at home. Editor Ross Andrew. It says this is the title, The Night of the Soul Thief. This is 17 pages. Justice Society of America, Earth 2. We have writer Paul Levitz, penciler Joe Staten, inker Dave Hunt, letterer Ben Oda, colorist Adrian Roy. And this was reprinted in Justice Society Volume 2 trade paperback in 2007. Showcase presents All-Star Comics trade paperback 2011. And All-Star Comics Only Legends Live Forever 2019. All right. So, Diane, can you give us the synopsis to this one?
Definitely. So, the Batman has died and his identity as Bruce Wayne has been revealed. Not long after, the world at large has learned the identity of Gotham's most famous Caped Crusader, or the identities of the Huntress and Robin, revealed as lawyers Helena Wayne and Dick Grayson, the latter of whom is currently serving as an American ambassador in South Africa. With Bill Jensen dead, Dr. Fate and the rest of the Just Society decide to trace the source of his power, which brings them to a park in Gotham. Unconvinced that Jensen acted alone, the Just Society split into groups of 3 to expand their search. The Huntress teams up with Dr. Fate, Power Girl teams up with the Flash, and Robin teams up with the Green Lantern, while Wildcat stays behind to look after the JSA headquarters. As the 3 groups search the park for clues as to the real culprit behind Batman's death, they each encounter elementals with powers exceeding those of the Just Society combined. Will the Society put up a strong fight against these elementals? They are quickly subdued, and the identity of their powerful enemy is revealed to be none other than Friedrich Voe, an ordinary man who sold himself to extra-dimensional gods in exchange for power. Realizing Voe intends to offer the Society heroes and other potential humans who could follow their lead as a sacrifice to these extra-dimensional gods, Dr. Fate manages to wake up from his coma and puts up a strong fight against Voe. While Dr. Fate manages to overpower Voe, Voe is himself betrayed by the very gods he intended to serve before Dr. Fate has the chance to actually subdue him. With Voe now left in a power-induced coma, Dr. Fate works to repair the damage Voe created between realities and uses the opportunity to relieve the world of their knowledge of Batman, Robin, and Huntress's identities, once again securing the safety of Batman's successors, as well as restoring order to the world at large. This concludes the Society story in Adventure Comics 463.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I thought there was a lot going on in this. To me, there's a lot of moving parts happening all at the same time, but I'm interested in what your initial impressions were. This is the answers for how Batman was killed and why. And Ashford, what was your initial thoughts when you finished reading this one?
My big takeaway from this is in future books we hear about the society at large. They understand that Batman and Bruce Wayne were two different people that died in two different situations because of the spell that Dr. Fate put on them. And now I see this in real time, or the actual story. Laurel, the two of us, we work on the Birds of Prey podcast, and we talk about how, I wish they had like an information text right here saying, hey, where that particular reference came from. And there's a lot of times where you read that, but there's not a lot of time where I go and seek that book out and actually read it. So maybe I might look at a Wikipedia entry, but to actually see this play out, it's cool, because a lot of times someone can reference something and it actually didn't happen. It's just something to reference to add depth. So to actually see this happen, it was pretty interesting.
Diane, what about you? What'd you think when you first read this one?
Well, I remember the first time I read this one, I was very excited to see, the aftermath of, Batman dying, and especially, learning that he was Bruce Wayne the whole time, and what those consequences were for Helena Wayne and Dick Grayson, whom the world now knows as Huntress and Robin, and how that's going to affect their careers moving forward. I mean, these are two people in positions of power. Not only are Helena Wayne and Dick Grayson, wealthy people who are the heirs to Bruce Wayne's estate, but they also work in professions that afford them a level of power. So in the case of Helena Wayne, she's a lawyer, so she has power over, she has power in court. So whenever she takes on a criminal case, she actually has the power to either send someone to prison or keep the person from going to prison. She's got that kind of power. And then you've got Dick Grayson, who is an American ambassador in, it was either Madagascar or South Africa. They kind of tend to change, where he was actually an ambassador in Africa, but he's on the African continent. So he's an American ambassador in that position and in Africa. And for the world to find out that, one of Africa's ambassadors is actually a superhero, that's going to cause some serious consequences for him, because, that's a conflict of interest right there. And the same is true of Helena Wayne. The world finding out that she's a lawyer and a superhero at the same time, there's conflict of interest there, because how do we know that the Huntress is not functioning as a lawyer on her own cases that she solved as the Huntress? So it creates problems for both of those characters. But I also feel like the story, while it does acknowledge that their identities were revealed, it doesn't really explore the consequences of that, because the focus then is, okay, so we know that Bill Jensen killed Bruce Wayne, but he was really the puppet in the situation. So who's the puppet master? You see, so the entire story is centered on the JSA finding who the puppet master is behind Bill Jensen, and they eventually find out who he is, but the revelation is rather underwhelming because, we're introduced to a brand new villain whose motivation isn't quite fleshed out, and we don't know which gods he's actually serving. We're just told that, he sold himself basically to some nether gods, and he wanted to offer the Society, as a sacrifice to those gods in order to, I guess, reign chaos and order, on the earth or something. So I would say my overall impression of this, it was off to a great start, as far as exploring the consequences of the world learning Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne and the consequences that has for both Dick Grayson and Helena Wayne, who are Robin and Huntress respectively. But it didn't actually focus on that, which is what I would have preferred. And instead, the whole story was them figuring out, okay, so who's the puppet master behind Bill Jensen? And we learn it's actually a new character, a new villain. But because this is not an established villain with an established history, we know next to nothing about his motivation, apart from a very simple, I just want to cause chaos. And we don't know what gods he's serving. We're just told that he's serving some gods and then he's suddenly taken out of the game. I definitely felt that this is definitely a story that should have happened in two parts. Part one should have dealt with the consequences of Bruce Wayne's identity being revealed and what ramifications that has for both Helena Wayne and Dick Grayson. And then part two should have dealt with the villain. But, they tried to wrap it all up in one story. So I would say overall, it had some great story ideas, but didn't really get the proper development, in my opinion.
Well, let's look at that a little bit more about the reveal of their identities. Do you think that they would be like mobbed out in public, that people would recognize them by sight because they're running around in this park? And I was like, do people know who you are now? Are they going to start, interfering in any of this? Do you think that was not realistic, but I mean, comic book realistic, I'll say it that way. What did you think about that?
The thing that I noticed, at least with Huntress and Robin running around without their masks on, is the thing that I noticed first is that neither one is concerned about hiding their identities at this point, because now everyone knows who they are, so what's even the point of wearing a mask? They've got no identity to hide anymore, but at the same time, no one's actually coming after them, which I thought was rather strange. And, they're just going after, whoever was actually pulling Bill Jensen's strings. So on the one hand, it's great that, they're still functioning as heroes even with their identities known, but I do find it odd that absolutely no one is, that there's absolutely no chaos in Gotham at this time with that revelation. I found that a bit odd, or rather, I found it very odd.
Ashford, what did you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I have some questions. I need my memory refreshed. So in Action Comics 462, they were at the funeral. So the people go like, well, Batman and Bruce Wayne, they're one and the same. We know that Robin was the ward, so did they just at the funeral, did everyone put together like, yep, Helena Wayne is Huntress, and yeah, Dick Grayson is Robin? When did everyone put everything together?
I must have been off panel because I don't remember seeing anything about it either.
So it's just that when we get to this story, it's the secret's out.
Yeah, that's very much how it happens.
Okay.
They don't actually explain at one point. People learned their identities. It's just assumed that, okay, so Batman died, his death revealed him as Bruce Wayne, and even though a funeral was held, we don't deal with the aftermath until after the funeral. So yeah, Paul Levitz just kind of dives right into it. He doesn't really put too much thought into the details of how did the public become aware that, Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same person. I assume an autopsy was probably done. So
okay, so yeah, it was just a lot that happened between panels, because I guess once Bruce Wayne stopped reporting to work, that's when they were like, wait a minute. Then that means you two, like, Dick Grayson, if you're not Robin, you know something. So we just need to ask you some questions. So I guess just Helena and Robin, they said, well, we're not going to put our mask on because what's the point?
Did that bother you at all?
I I guess I was just kind of confused, but I think also too, I think we talked about last time where this must have been the first time where like a really major character dies. So usually like if major character dies in storytelling, a lot of time that is the end of the story. So now we're seeing the fallout of, okay, when this major character dies, what happens after that? So we're not used to that. And I think that's what we're seeing here. So I think Diane was talking about some like characters' motivations. I'm interested in going forward with this podcast because I kind of want to see what is Paul Levitz's motivations, because it's like, okay, you killed off this character. I'm still kind of confused about how they made this Batman paranoid and he was taking on the JSA. Like, I still think that part's weird. And then that he died kind of unceremoniously, didn't resolve his conflict with the JSA, didn't really come to terms with, you know what, I was wrong. So I'm interested in, like, you know, I don't want to bypass this story, but I'm interested in going forward just to see, like, where is this going? But I think it's going with, okay, next chapter of the JSA and having these, the newer generation level up. I think that's what we're about to see, but I don't know. I guess it did bother me because I guess I have questions.
Well, yeah. Well, to answer your question about where's Paul Levitz moving forward, if you remember from DC Superstars number 17, that Paul Levitz, you know, created the character of the Huntress to basically function as the Just Society's Batman character, basically. But he also wants to do more with that character. You know, he very much emphasized in that DC Superstars 17 column. Sorry, motorbike. I get those a lot. So anyway, Paul Levitz, you know, tried to emphasize in DC Superstars number 17 that Helena Wayne is more than just a daughter of Batman. She's also her own character. And so part of the reason I think that he killed off Bruce Wayne in this story is to help set up Helena Wayne as Gotham's newest protector as the Huntress. And considering that Helena Wayne by this point also has an ongoing solo story, originally in Batman Family, but once that title got cancelled, her solo stories moved over to Wonder Woman as a backup feature. They're now developing Helena Wayne as Gotham's newest protector. So the Batman was a thing of the past. The Huntress is the future. So that's basically where he's going with this. And Dick Grayson, they also have him, you know, in functioning as an ambassador in Africa. So that's one more person that they're, you know, moving out of Helena's way, basically. So everything that's being done with the Batman characters in this time frame is being done to set up Helena Wayne as Gotham's newest protector as the Huntress. And so now the focus is on developing the Huntress as a new legacy in Gotham. And, you know, who is the Huntress as a heroine? You know, what drives the Huntress to do what she does? Who is she when she is not the Huntress? That's very much where they're going forward with this character. So I would argue that Paul Levitz's motivation with killing off Bruce Wayne in this story was to basically set the stage for Helena Wayne, his daughter, to take over. And at best, we missed out on any potential conflicts that would have come out of Bruce Wayne finding out that his own daughter is the Huntress. But at the same time, I do understand where he was coming from. You know, this is Helena's story now. Her dad's no longer the main character. So in order to move forward with Helena, we need to move on from Bruce. And so I guess that's where the motivation comes from on Paul Levitz and Joe Staton as well, because he's also helping to develop Helena by this point as well.
Well, I have a much shallower point about the whole mask business. Perhaps you'd consider it shallow. Diane, wasn't Helena trying to honor both parents in the way she put her Huntress thing together? Without that mask, what is the Batman reference in this going forward? You know, that if they had gone on with her not having a mask, because potentially they could have done that. What doesn't that change her honoring both parents? What did you think of that?
I don't think it would change her honoring both parents because she's still Helena Wayne. She's still the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle. And the costume, even without the mask, is still an amalgamation of her mother's costume with her dad's costume. So she still has the bat cape. And the colors of the Huntress costume are purple, which is in reference to Catwoman's own costume. So, which was a purple dress, you know. So, yeah, I think she would still be conveying, you know, that she's a daughter of Batman and Catwoman, because to start with, you know, people now know that Bruce Wayne was Batman and people know who she is. So, and she still has, you know, the stylized H on her belt buckle that looks like a bat. So, yeah, she's still, I don't think that her not having the mask on takes away from that. You know, I still think that she's still honoring both sides of her legacy, both sides of her family legacy, with or without the mask.
I've got two more little follow-up questions for you, and then we'll get Ashford's opinion too. But first, Diane, without the mask, she looks so much more, I guess, an innocent face because she looks so much younger. Do you get that impression as well? Is she always supposed to look young, and without the mask, it's just making a bigger impression on me, or is she always supposed to be slightly fresh-faced?
Well, if we consider that Helena Wayne in 1979 is about 21, 22 years old by this point, you know, because if we take into account she was born in 1957, you know, she is 21 or 20 years old, depending on, you know, whether or not this story takes place before or after her birthday. But she's a very young person in this story, so she's still, you know, maturing, not just as a superhero, but also as an individual as well. So I think it makes sense for Helena to look pretty fresh-faced in this, because, you know, she's still in her prime, you know, she's still very young, you know, and so she's, I would say, probably a bit older than Power Girl in terms of appearance, whereas Power Girl looks like an 18-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. Helena is supposed to be 21 or 22 by this point, so yeah, I think it makes sense for her to look fresh-faced, you know, but, you know, when she's got the mask on, no one can tell that, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of my first impressions. Ashford, what do you think? Does that change her outfit to not, you know, do you agree with Diane that it doesn't matter if she's got the sort of fake bat ears kind of looking mask on or not, or the age that she looks, if that's, you know, imposing to be a superhero who looks so young?
I like her with the mask on. Just if I had my choice, all the characters would have the masks on. But as far as her looking young, I think that's Joe Staton, because I think all of them look young and fresh-faced. Mm-hmm. So I think that's his artwork.
Now I have one last question on the outfit, Diane. She's carrying her little rope thing on her hip. How long has she been doing that? And I just didn't notice.
How long has she been doing it in this story or in general?
Just in general. Has she always had that and I just didn't notice it before? Or is it a new addition?
She's always had a rope on her, but, you know, it's not always depicted as being on her hip like Wonder Woman's lasso. But yeah, she always has a rope on her because that's the only way that she's able to swing between buildings and stuff like that. So
I guess it caught my eye because, like you said, it looks like Wonder Woman. And I'm like, wait, I don't remember that.
Yeah, she always has a rope on her. She's usually swinging off of the rope. She's not usually carrying the rope on her side. But because, you know, Dr. Fate is escorting her, while they're working together, you know, she's not swinging, so she's keeping it on her hip because she doesn't need it at the moment. You know, Dr. Fate's carrying her. So
I would like to shift into that situation because I thought this was interesting that Dr. Fate sort of magically scoops her up because he's like, okay, we're gonna go search, but Power Girl's kind of angry because the two of them sort of float off and don't bother to tell anybody else what they're doing. So she's really annoyed by that. I'm just curious what your reaction to that would be. Is this a normal thing for Power Girl to do? Because her character's kind of interesting here. She gets angry. She's sort of like playful with the Flash. She's going to eat hot dogs. And then, oh, nope, we're going back in, you know, this elemental monster thing's got to be dealt with. What did you think of her in this and how that whole thing went down, Diane?
Well, I think in my head, you know, since Power Girl is closest to Huntress in this point of the story, you know, I guess in her mind she wanted to work with the Huntress because, I mean, if we're pairing off, you know, non-powered humans with powered humans. I guess Power Girl probably wanted to work with the Huntress, and Dr. Fate just made the decision to work with Huntress without her input, so that's probably the reason she's cross about it. And even though she's paired off with the Flash, she kind of saw it as an opportunity, to do a rematch of an earlier race that they did together. And this was during the Keystone City story with the Thorn. That was the first time that they actually had that race together. So yeah, I guess the reason that Power Girl was cross about it at first was I guess she wanted to work with the Huntress, and Dr. Fate just kind of made that decision without her input, and that upset her. And then you've got the Flash, whom she actually does like, but then she kind of just quickly got over Dr. Fate, just taken off with Huntress, when she realized, oh well, if I get to work with the Flash, at least I can do a rematch of that early race that we did. And, she kind of cheated along the way, and then got to a hot dog stand, and then they came across that fire-looking creature that immediately made me think of Surtur from the Dark Multiverse story. Yeah.
Well, I just thought it was fun because she ran a whole gamut of emotion. She's annoyed, she's playful, she's, hey, let's stop for a snack, which I thought was just, that was funny. And then, and then she's, of course, willing to swing right back into action. Ashford, what did you make of her appearance in this?
I really enjoyed it, and I definitely want more Power Girl Jay Garrick time. I think the uncle-niece thing they have going there works. And I like what you're saying as far as we're getting to see her do a range of emotions, because I think that's a real person instead of you're just one note or one beat, and you're kind of slightly showing different parts of your personalities depending on your situation or the people that you're with. So I think that's cool too.
I'm curious. The next section here that I wanted to get into, the problems that they have to fight here. What are we? Elementals. I'm sorry. Lost my word there. The elemental creatures that they have to fight in here and are defeated by. What did you think of that? Was this a good enough thing for this guy to be capturing them? Were they sort of playing dead when he captured him? I had trouble telling that apart. What did you think, Ashford? Was that really what was happening there?
Well, for me, I just think a lot of this is disorienting for me because what we just read, and then it immediately leads to this. So I feel like we haven't had time to kind of come to, like, aren't they just walking away from the funeral or something? So like, I'm still kind of like stepping from that. And then this happens where there were wacky things that happened in the two previous issues as far as supernatural things, but this ups it even more, like, because this is a little bit more weird. So I'm just kind of disoriented with what's going on, where like no one's really reflected on, man, Bruce Wayne's dead, he died. But that's when you're doing an ongoing saga, an ongoing serial, they have to do these things to kind of will keep you engaged, because you don't have time to really think about the death, because, oh, what's this? The Titanic just came through my ship. What is that about in the future? So it's like, sorry, I made a weird Doctor Who reference. So I don't have time to think about the death of Bruce Wayne because now my heroes are in peril again. What is this about? So
I do think Robin does some reflecting, because he says you have to learn to cope. That's what happened when his parents were killed, and now he feels like he's sort of doing it all over again and is planning to help Huntress. So that's where I felt like I got some reflection, at least before the end of the story, because the end, of course, Helena lets loose. But that reflection there was enough for me that we sort of touched base on that. Diane, what about you? Was that enough for you? Should we have had more reflection?
Well, I think I kind of did say earlier that I felt that this story should have been done in two parts. I felt that part one should have dealt with the aftermath of Bruce Wayne's death, and part two should have dealt with the villain who actually facilitated Bruce's death. Best we get that one panel towards the end of the story where Helena Wayne learns that, Bruce Wayne was really killed as a tool to lure the just society where Friedrich, though the villain, needed them to be, so that he could offer them as a sacrifice to some nether gods that he sold himself to. So the thing that Helena Wayne is really cross about here is the fact that, her father was killed off as a tool, or as a pawn, as she herself put it, to set into motion, what Friedrich Will actually had planned, which was to capture the JSA and offer the JSA as a sacrifice, basically, to whatever gods he decided to sell himself to. So, yeah, I can understand Helena's anger there, because, why kill an innocent man just to draw me out and draw my friends out? You killed an innocent person as a pawn in your damned game, is what she says, So, yeah, Helena, that's the only time that we truly get to see how Helena feels about her situation. So she just lost her father in an incredibly traumatizing way. And when she learns the real reason he died, she lets loose and beats the crap out of the man who took her father's life, because, how dare you kill my father just to draw us all out for your own selfish reasons, which is, in this case, sacrificing us to some other gods that we don't even know who they are, Mm-hmm. So I think that that's the only time in the story that we get a real true reflection of, how the characters feel about the death, so we do get a moment as well where Robin acknowledges that the world, hasn't quite, gotten used to the fact that Batman is dead, the reality of that still sinking in. So we get a bit of reflection, but not in the way that it should have happened, in my opinion. The one person who truly reacts to the death is really Helena there, because once she learns the truth, she really lets loose and beats the crap out of the man that, did the deed. But that's really it.
The art really was great. The tears flowing, but the anger on her face. That particular panel, there's one where they sort of stop her that, okay, we need to stop now because he's in a coma from this God thing going sideways. And then we get some sort of a relief, a sort of renewed hope expression when she finds out they're going to be able to make it look like Batman and Bruce Wayne were two different people. I love the art and how they used her expressions there in like 2 pages. We said we had the gamut of, not a whole gamut, but a lot of Power Girl emotions. Well, this was really well done, these 2 pages.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we've got this bad guy, Ashford. I don't know if you've gotten your say on this yet. What did you think if we just sort of have random bad guy with these dark gods thing? What did you think of that?
Again, with these the elementals, I just thought, well, this is a good thing we have Dr. Fate and Green Lantern, because this is out of the ordinary, extra strange. I was really more into following what the heroes were doing than these villains. I don't really know what to make out of them.
I did like that Dr. Fate fights back with the people's, I guess, faith in Batman. Sort of used the Batman positive energy against the bad guy. I was like, well, that was an idea, It was unique. I've never seen somebody, do that. That was sort of wild. I don't know, because it was like Dr. Fate couldn't fight the guy. Oh, he can't fight the guy. And then suddenly, yes, we can. And it was because he tried to take away the memory of Batman. And I don't know, people's psyche revolted or something. I'm not sure how that's supposed to go.
But I like that kind of stuff where if it's like, well, if you're metaphysical, then we're going to have to beat you with some metaphysical type stuff. So I'll accept that. I like that.
It was different.
Yeah.
No longer shall people remember the Batman being revealed as Bruce Wayne in the moment of his death, nor shall your identities be known. Instead, let them believe both Bruce Wayne and Batman died atop that glistening tower, but separate deaths. That's what Dr. Fate said.
Yeah. Sort of a nice summary to the end of this, sort of resets our status quo so we can have our Huntress and I guess Robin. Diane, is there a lot more with Robin in the Huntress book, or is it going to be mostly just her now?
It's just mostly her just now. At best, Robin does appear in one Helena Wayne Huntress story in Wonder Woman, but he doesn't stick around long. As soon as he comes, he immediately goes. So yeah, we don't really see him again until Infinity Inc. And I think prior to Infinity Inc., he actually does appear in Brave and the Bold. In a Brave and the Bold story where the Earth 1 Batman ends up on Earth 2, and he actually teams up with both the Earth 2 Robin and the Earth 2 Batwoman, Kathy Kane, to take out, I think it was Doctor Strange. Yeah. So he does actually, so we don't really see Robin again until Brave and the Bold story. Then we see him again in Infinity Inc., some years later, and then of course you see him again in America vs. Society. But yeah, Robin from this point forward is not going to have a very prominent appearance moving forward.
Well, then this definitely resets, so we would have our Huntress set up like you were saying. When you explained it like that, that made a whole lot of sense, that we're sort of setting her up to be the solo hero of Gotham. That makes sense. So anyway, I liked exactly what Ashford was saying with the people parts of this. I definitely liked the villain side of this, not so much, because it didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I didn't completely understand how these elemental things, did they win, did they not? It was just sort of, I chalked it up to, okay, we're just going to keep going. It was one of those moments. But the art was extraordinarily good, and I don't know if that's just because I'm seeing it in black and white, or if the color is just as good, but man, the facial expressions in this thing are just wonderful. Diane, you've got the color. Is it the same thing with you? Was the expressions on this as good in color?
Yeah, it definitely was still good in color. I like that in the colored version, because I'm reading this off of the All-Star Comics Only Legends Live Forever book. It's very brightly colored, so it's not even using the same colors as when it was first printed in 1979. But yeah, the bright colors that they use really augments Joe Staton's artwork, and it really makes everything pop out. And in the case of Helena Wayne, since we see a full range of emotions from her, she goes from determined to shocked to angry to sad. All of that is very well conveyed in color. And of course we've got Power Girl having her moment where she's upset where, okay, so Dr. Fate just took off with the Huntress and didn't even let me have a say in that, to suddenly being chipper that she's going to be working with the Flash, and so she's got that smile on her face. So yeah, the facial expressions are definitely augmented in the colored version. Of course, the colored version I'm referring to is the one in the reprint, in the actual reprints, and we're not looking at the actual original print from 1979, so it probably would look different with the original colors then.
Ashford, I'm assuming you agree with us.
Oh yeah, I'm staring at this last panel with, starting from the left, it's Huntress. She has the mask back on with Robin right next to her, with Alan Scott, Green Lantern, and the Flash, and we have Power Girl between the two of them. And I always love how Joe Staton draws Power Girl. And we have Dr. Fate facing them. It's just a beautiful panel. I mean, just the definitive nature, just everything is defined, clean cut lines. It's like, yeah, if you didn't know who these characters were, but you saw this, you would be interested in going like, I want to read those books because I want to know who these characters are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the interpersonal and the inner emotions showing bit of this really just made it shine. I wasn't as thrilled with the bad guy. I sort of am like, I don't understand why it was just this sort of schmo that somehow gained power. That didn't make any sense to me. It seems like he should have been somebody or worked on it for 40 years or something,
Yeah.
Diane, any last thoughts on this one?
I think we've covered all the bases here. We've got, we covered, the characters, the aftermath of, the death of Bruce Wayne. We talked about the villain. We talked about, the artwork and the facial expressions, whether it looks great in black and white versus color. I think we've covered all the bases in this one.
Ashford, what about you?
Same here. That's all I have. What about you, Laurel?
No, that's all. It was a really nice like I said, interpersonal wise, that part was really good. The villain, that felt a little weak.
It was like this was an aftermath. Like this was an epilogue.
Mm-hmm,
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Well, hey, what do you guys out there think about this one? This was in Adventure Comics 463. We're getting that gradual release model of we're about to tear off. Helena Wayne is about to get her own solo adventures, but we're gradually releasing you to that. We see her with this family, and I do like this as far as she was part of a team, and you know she's getting some training, and then she's about to venture off into her own adventures. I do like that as a gradual transition, a gradual release model. Write to us, please, at thehuntress.podcast.com. That'd be pretty neat. We're also on Twitter at Huntress Podcast. You can catch us on all the podcatchers like Spotify. You write in the /Huntress Podcast, you'll find us, as well as Apple Podcasts, where you can give us a 5-star rating and write a review, please. We would enjoy that very much. We also have a Patreon going on, so if you go to thehuntress.podcast.com for just $1 a month, you could be a patron of this fine network, the Right On Network. So until next time, it's been Laurel, Diane, and myself, Ashford. Happy New Year, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.